Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Doug has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I want you to take a second and imagine with me that we had a drug in our society so attractive and so accessible that 95% of our kids used it. I want you to imagine with me for a second that that drug was so addictive that a third of those kids reported using it almost constantly. 3 to 4 hours a day simply just spent using the drug. And then I want you to imagine with me that this drug has demonstrably negative impacts on the health and well-being of our kids, that most say using the drug, though they do it, makes them feel vastly worse about themselves and vastly worse about their life. Imagine if the drug was correlated to loss of sleep, increasing depression, and deteriorating mental health. Mr. Speaker, if we were faced with that, wouldn't we all be jumping to action? Mr. Speaker, everything I just described is actually real and happening, except that it's not a normal drug. Mr. Speaker, this is the Surgeon General's report right here, 2023, report on social media and mental health. The data is in and the verdict is in. We know that there is a massive problem when it comes to our kids and social media. We know it empirically and we know it experientially. As a parent of young kids myself, and most of my peers being parents of school-aged kids, I want to testify firsthand to how impactful and important this is. We know, we got the data, that too many kids are hopelessly addicted. We know that depression and anxiety are sky high. Especially among our young girls, we are seeing the devastating impact. We know that these things are so powerful that we actually see brain structure changed in these kids, in the same way that we see brain structure change when there's a substance abuse disorder or a gambling disorder. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, we know that this is not an accident. These things are designed for addiction. Now, Mr. Speaker, this speech I'm giving right now, this is not a blanket anti-social media tirade. I have social media, I use it, I think it can be used for some good purposes. But we're talking about kids, young kids. And the call I want to make today is to make sure that we are doing everything we can so that our kids and our parents aren't getting steamrolled by big tech. And I think the very least we can do is to make sure that we're empowering parents and giving them every tool they need to best equip and guide their children in this increasingly difficult area. Mr. Speaker, there have been a bevy of bills this session that have at least attempted to address this problem. One of them was one I carried, but we have had House bills, Senate bills, Republican bills, Democrat bills, and frankly, most of them, in my opinion, have been fairly modest in what they're seeking to do. They've asked for things such as social media companies can't collect and sell the data of minors. They've asked that parents should at least know or consent to kids having a social media account. Maybe parents needing to say yes if that account is going to be used between the late night hours, 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. They've asked that social media can't intentionally employ addictive feeds when it comes to kids. Pretty minimum floor-level asks, if you ask me. But despite all these bills, despite all the efforts, I have sat in committee after committee and heard every excuse in the book used to kill these bills. We have gotten nothing meaningful done on this. We're about a decade, roughly so, into this smartphone and social media real-time experiment on our kids. And the research is in, and it's indisputable. To be honest with you, we don't need more studies. We already know what's going on. So, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to our kids' lives, it is time to kick big tech out of the driver's seat and put parents back in charge. We got to do more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.